Very good. So we had a very enriching presentation. We can't match her level of energy and the work which she is doing, but taking from what she has mentioned, what India is doing and what states are doing, our focus here will be more on the business side of things. But even for businesses, as she was mentioning, it is very difficult to get this agenda started. Always it is on the fringes. Sustainability is good to have, but whether it's really embedded in their as part of their strategy or as part of their culture, do they really actually do it, or they simply report it? It's a big question. It's not just a problem in India. Almost everywhere in the world. Europe is slightly better. Europe generally, and I was mentioning over the lunch that there the education on sustainability starts at the primary school. So our children, when they grew up, they were taught about sustainability, what is sustainable living, at a very early age. So we don't have to teach them as parents now. And that is in Scandinavian countries. I lived in Denmark, luckily that time when the children were very young. So this is already ingrained in their brain. So it doesn't have to be forced. Similarly, when they grow up, I am assuming that they will follow this, right? So the level of awareness in the general population is very high. They will not do things which is not meeting any sustainability norms, right? So this is very well grained. Now the key question what we are trying to address here is companies have to obviously manage their economic performance, right? Economics, supply chain goals. But moment we say sustainability, then we are also expecting them to contribute to both environmental and social sustainability. What do you think are the key challenges? What are, irrespective of the industry, many of the industries are obviously small and medium enterprises. Some are large corporations, they are in different industries. When a company decides on their sustainability strategies, all the three, the economic, social and environmental dimensions have to be addressed, right? It will come through metrics, I will talk about it later, but what do you think is kind of stopping them or creating challenges on this journey towards sustainability? And you are right now much more well aware of what is happening in India, and you have been interacting, I am assuming, that many different kinds of organizations, both startups and large. Yeah, keep the mic. Any thoughts?
Sir, I think the major problem is that the production of coal is less than the consumption of coal. The majority, like 70% of industries in India, and everyone is using non-renewable sources of energy. So that is the main problem. Otherwise, I'm working on ESG project only here in IIT Kharagpur. So I was studying BRSR as a framework. So there I have seen that these frameworks are data intensive. So industries refuse to fill all those details. And Principle 6 works on environmental aspects only in BRSR, and I have seen that there are many points related to water consumption and their disclosures that they are just avoiding it, or they are just changing the units.
You can give it to them. Okay. Yeah.
So main problem with the industries are these frameworks are very data intensive, so they are just avoiding it all.
So then what you indirectly you are saying that they also do not have mechanisms to collect the data, right? If they don't have data, how will they report? And data collection itself is doesn't come free. That also requires investment. So unless they clearly see that this will lead to some also economic goals in the long run, no company is willing to invest that much unless somebody startup or others and they have a very clear vision of what they are doing. But in most companies, this linkage of environmental and social sustainability goals to the economic goals is missing. It's not that this has to be completely separate, right? Generally, the initial feeling was if we have to improve on social sustainability, maybe our profits will decline. But it's not true. In most cases, we can actually show that linkage. If you help the employees, generally their productivity will increase. And there are enough studies which showed companies which follow good environmental and social practices will also improve on their economic performance. But that message, as madam was also mentioned, everything has to be backed up by data and some evidence. Most companies generally and CEOs are also working in a short time horizon. They have to meet every quarter their targets. So all of these come into, they are sidelined, particularly when the performance is not good, when economic downturns are happening. The easiest targets are these kind of projects, right? Sustainability related initiatives take a back seat, and it's not new and it's not unique to India. Everywhere in the world it happens. So when I was working as a consultant in Deloitte in 2008, that time the financial crisis happened, right? And most of the companies, the large US global Fortune 500 also almost overnight reduced their budget for anything on sustainability. And I will show briefly what that time what we did, how we convinced companies, and we created a new sustainability practice within Deloitte. Again, sometimes the carrot and stick approach works well. In generally, companies, if they see the risk of not doing something, they will do. If you tell them all the positive things of what will happen if you do this, people do not believe. But sometimes they have a fear. If I don't do this, the negative consequences are very high. So sometimes we try to kind of portray the risks of not doing it. And that is even now true. So if you see that the customers will stop buying from you, or there are policy, meaning there are some regulations, if you violate those you cannot do business, then the risks are very high. But you don't have to reach that stage where things are at, you are almost waiting for such negative risks to materialize and then you are going to take action. We know if you keep things so late, then by the time everybody else has possibly done, so some competitors are surely moving ahead. So these kind of sometimes painting a negative picture in corporate's mind also help. But nowadays, hopefully in the last 10 years, many companies have realized that this has to be part of, this is not a kind of good to have thing, this is already embedded, should be very much well embedded in their strategy. So we will talk little bit before we go into the case. And sorry, yeah, there is a lag. So when we say sustainability concerns in supply chains, in global supply chains, as madam was mentioning, for a country level index, similarly there are performance measures. There are economic performance measures which we all follow. Companies have to have targets of quality, cost, flexibility, etc. Social issues, there are also different kinds of metrics have been created, and companies will choose something which is more. It is also true that every company cannot do everything. Like we had seen that every district, every state need not do everything, right? So there has to be prioritization. There are overall frameworks which is available. No company can follow every framework to the T, because their businesses are different. Frameworks are very general, but each industry, pharmaceutical industry or a steel industry, depending on the resource intensity of their industry, they have to define very specific priority areas they will work on. Maybe they will not work on certain areas, it is fine, but there are certain things which they have to prioritize. So social issues also we see: child labor, bonded labor, working conditions, gender equality. If a government, the entire country is struggling, you can imagine this is also a struggle for companies. But if they clearly see the linkage of doing this well within their own employee pool or within their immediate extended supply chain, if these things are not done, maybe one day a small SME supplier actually goes bankrupt. Right? In a supply chain context, I always tell that if as a buying company you are pressurizing suppliers too much, you are always expecting cost reduction from them, you are asking for the highest possible quality at the lowest possible cost, it will not happen. At certain point of time that will break. Suppliers cannot really deliver anything to you at price and quality point to which. What happens if that supplier goes bankrupt? Maybe it's a very critical supplier. They deliver things which are impossible. If they go out of business, not only it's their loss, your loss also. And you have to then completely start building your new supply chain, a new set of suppliers. Again, I am saying the negative stories help. Sometimes people understand that people do not normally get this immediately, right? Sorry. Yeah, this is not working. What's working? Remove this from the pocket. The environmental ones better even for many years. because always that linkage with cost was much clear. If I use less energy, I can really reduce my costs. So I was in early years, I was also a consultant for a cement company. So all cement factories I used to visit and do work, efficiency improvement and lean and process improvement work. So this was even in the between 2000 and 2005. So that time itself, even when sustainability was not at all a big buzzword in Indian business, Indian manufacturing, but most of those companies, resource intensive industries like cement or steel or fertilizers, they were always quite conscious because it had a direct impact on their cost and profit, right? So they were using, trying to reuse and recycle material. If you see, cement companies use a lot of unwanted recycled stuff as a fuel for cement kilns, right? So they used to use tires. Tire was also not, obviously not very environmental friendly, but coconut shells, many different things people use as fuel. And because and also many of them were moving to that time variable frequency motors. Those who know that from a direct motor, so it has a direct impact on energy consumption. And this was not because of sustainability. They were doing mainly for cost, but they also knew that it has a environmental impact. So what I am trying to emphasize here is there are linkages. It's not that environmental and social has to be completely separate from your economic goals. But moment we try to improve on multiple dimensions simultaneously, somewhere or other there will be some trade-offs. Everything cannot be achieved simultaneously together. At the same time, we cannot say that these are completely independent. There are linkages. That's why if you improve on environmental goals and social goals, your economic goals are also likely to improve. But beyond a point, there may be a trade-offs. I'm not sure whether some of you have learned there is a concept of efficiency frontier, right, in economics. You try to improve, and I always give this example. A student who has a very low CGPA, not doing well in extracurricular, they have actually the opportunities to improve on everything. But if somebody has very high CGPA, topper of the class, at the same time he is in multiple committees, they will actually face the trade-offs because they are already good in so many things, but people perceive it completely differently. It's the poor companies who are always crying for help. It's the poor students who are not doing well always crying for help, but they have the maximum opportunity to improve because they are kind of performing just at bare minimum level. So they don't face trade-offs. The trade-offs are faced by companies who are working at that efficiency frontier. Similarly, as individuals, if we think we have many things to improve, we don't face trade-offs. But you will see that the companies who are underperforming, the states which are underperforming, they are always crying for help, which is not true. They have actually immense potential to improve. But the large companies or the leading companies in any industry, maybe they have already done very well on all these dimensions. Then at certain stage of time, they will face these trade-offs. How companies break these trade-offs? It comes through innovation. It comes through a new business model. So they have to break these trade-offs to go to a further trajectory, right? But with the given set of technology, given set of processes, they at some point of time, if they have excelled on multiple dimensions, they will face that trade-off. If they have to break that trade-off, they have to innovate. And that innovation comes from process innovation or product innovation or a business model innovation. In this case also it's same too, in a sustainability context. Many companies are possibly doing well in all dimensions. So at some point of time they will face this trade-off. But others, majority of the 95% of the companies have many things to improve on all these dimensions simultaneously. So they don't actually face trade-offs. If they want, they can surely improve simultaneously in each of these. Now, what do you think are the critical challenges in implementing sustainability? One is about setting the direction, but in implementing, we have mentioned some of the things. That one is the data availability and data collection efforts. Are there anything you can either choose from a company perspective? Company and supply chains are different. Within a company, you still have a lot of control. When you say in the extended supply chain, you are working with many suppliers, many of them are small and medium enterprises. You are also working with your upstream, downstream customers and distributors and so on. For everybody, it's their own business. You don't have much control over them. Similarly, in a local community, we have all seen, possibly watched the series Panchayat, right? So we see day to day what is happening there. So what do you think are the critical challenges? at a community level, at a company level, or a supply chain level.
Main factor I think is knowledge dissemination. That is not properly done. I mean, if we talk about even the people who are preparing these reports, I mean, CA, that course previously never had this ESG concept at all.
Yes.
Now even the CAs also have to do a different degree to get themselves oriented.
Yeah.
And it's not always possible for all the companies to outsource their preparation of the financial statements to the Big Four.
Yeah.
So that is one, again, a problem. Another thing is, sir, like many companies, these big manufacturing companies, like if I take the apparel industry, in manufacturing they use a lot of water.
Yes.
But when, I mean, if you go to the lower level who is actually working in the factory level, they don't even know the difference between what is returning back of the water in the same state when they had used it as a raw material. They do not know that. Even when it is being thrown away or it is going out of the industry, where it is being disposed and all, they also have no knowledge. So that knowledge emanation, I mean, it's only in the strategic level that yes, we have to do this, these are the requirements, but how to get it done through each level, starting from the ground level who are working, that is not available, I think. That is again a big
So
challenge.
partly some of these can be, government cannot also get into everything. So partly either company invests, depending on the level of
Yes.
company, they do some initial basic training. Next level is at the industry association level, they can organize some training. What I have seen in other countries is these industry associations or local clusters are very strong, so that each company do not have to invest in this, right. So they organize a training where 50 companies from the local area will come and everybody get trained in such things, right. I don't know whether that is happening to what extent. When I was there in India, some cases it was happening bits and pieces, but there is a need to do this at a very local level, right.
Yes.
In UK these things happen at a very local regional level. So in northeast England, or even there are few counties where together there are industry bodies who organize such trainings. There is a funding which comes from the government even for organizing such trainings. Government doesn't get into the training, but there is some basic funding which is there, where the local clusters and local associations organize such trainings, because it's not practically possible for each individual company to have the trainers. The number of trainers is also limited, and there is a economies of scale we can achieve. 50 companies can get trained in one go, right. Still there is a problem. Each individual company may learn, but in a supply chain which is also spread across the world, or maybe even if, let's assume it's all within the country, but let's say some suppliers are in Gujarat, some are in Tamil Nadu, some are in Jharkhand. How do you ensure everybody has learnt, right? So that is the next level of problem. But I sincerely hope now, at least at a local cluster level, regional level, those kind of training should be
Sir,
done.
again, another problem is the basic ethics. That, I mean, if the strategic level thinkers and the board level people, if they think that this is a matter to be shrug off and the denial stage that we do not have to do it now.
Yeah.
And it's like if I take waste, if it is not in front of your eyes, then it's gone.
Yeah.
But they don't know that where it is getting dumped and all. So these basic things are missing. So if this can be addressed, but again that comes from ethics and personal training.
There also what I have seen, if the community is very well aware, if these things are happening, suppose somebody is dumping some sewage or something, and the local people actually protest and complain to the government. In UK it happens frequently. There also it doesn't mean that every company is as sane. There is a water company, they've dumped a lot of sewage in Thames River, right. Now they have been fined heavily, millions of pounds, because the water was tested, because local residents complained, right. Sometimes the beach, even in the sea, some sewage and effluent are going, but people are very vigilant. People are complaining and immediately
Here
reporting
it is
to
like who will say, who will bell the cat?
And
Is that
finally,
the problem?
there is also a risk. If somebody comes to know, even my life is under threat, people will come to know, is aadmi ne complain kiya hai. So nobody is willing to raise that voice, right. So there are a lot of very difficult systemic challenges. Is there anything else? Any thoughts? Okay, let's move on. As I was mentioning, so understanding the risk of not doing is also important. There are many, and that thing usually gels well with the companies. There are some market risk, there is a reputation risk, there is a regulatory risk, because if you don't follow, you are not able to do. In certain industries, this material risk, because there is also a finite shortage of materials. If you are not able to recycle or reuse or remanufacture, there is a finite, someday you will run out of the raw material, right? Or you devise new kind of materials. So what we did, this is still old. I mean, I did this work in 2009. It's not that it is completely my own, but we also looked at academic literature, and we decided, when companies also, they cannot do everything, as I said. So we created a framework to show, depending on your competitive focus and the kind of risk which you are facing, what is the best strategy for you. And this is also not static. Over a period of time, you can move from one of these strategies to something else. So what I am looking at is, there are operating risk of not doing sustainability, market risk, and business sustainability is different from business sustainability. That's your business itself will not be there, right? If you think the operating risk of not doing sustainability is high, and your focus is primarily on process related competitive advantage, these are industries like steel, cement, fertilizer. There is hardly any product differentiation. Things are in the processes, and if you don't do well, the operating risk is very high, because already it's an energy intensive industry. So the operating risk of not doing environmental, not able to conserve water, not able to reduce energy or using renewable energy is very high. So such companies should have to focus on eco-efficiency, more efficiency in terms of using of resources. If you say that your focus is not so much on process, on products, that means using that environmental leadership, you still have to design products which are using less materials and other so on, but it starts from here. They might still also start here and then move there, right? This is almost true for everybody. Everybody also has to do it, but then they move to this. If the market risks are high, that means either you are B2B company, you are selling to other industries and they are very environmentally conscious, or there are certain, or your consumer group which you are targeting is very environmentally aware, maybe it's a young population, whatever. If the market risk is very high, then again you have to demonstrate beyond compliance leadership, not just ticking the box in terms of what is compliance, but what are you doing in terms of beyond compliance leadership. I will give some examples later. Similarly, if it's product, you can say it's a eco branding, and there are a lot of companies who are doing this branding in terms of environmental products and so on. If the business sustainability risk is high, then either it's a sustainable development on the process side, or it's a product stewardship which they have to follow. So clearly, for every company, the strategy will be different. And as I said, this is also dynamic. They might start here and then move there, or they might start here and move there. So this is a pathway each company has to decide. And as part of the consultancy agreement with different companies, we used to do this assessment first. What is the level of risk they will have? What is their focus? This is also simplistic. Every company doesn't necessarily have only products or processes. Every company will have some differentiation in products, some differentiation in processes. It cannot be completely watertight, but this is a good starting point to see where they focus on, right? Because everything they cannot do at the same time. Here I show some examples. Environmental cost leadership means utilizing alternate source of material, developing additional sustainable services to go along with the product, as I was mentioning, instead of having a product, whether it's a product as a service or renting or leasing agreements, or using alternate sources of material. But alternate source of material even within a company is difficult. I mean, you have worked in Tata Sale, so you know. Suddenly if we ask the R&D people to change something which has been going on very well for 30, 40, 50 years, it's not easy. Suddenly, because the product is working fine, the product meets all your requirements. Suddenly you are asking somebody to change the material and do additional work and experimentation and so on, it is not easy. So, but companies have moved on that agenda. Product stewardship, minimize use of non-renewable materials, design new products with local life cycle. One is changing the material, but how do we ensure that over the usage of the life cycle of the product, this overall material usage is low? Right? That needs to again take into consideration many things. Then we mapped the economic benefits. You decide, I will show later on again through the shareholder value map, that each of these actions what you take should also have some relation with some of the economic benefits, not all. Some will reduce in cost, some will reduce overall life cycle cost, some will improve investor relation, and then in turn will have less cost of capital for you, improve shareholder value. Some of these will be more competitive in nature, you will be able to stave off competition, create some preemption in the market. You need to assess that and do this assessment, as we have seen how government has done it. Same thing, each company also has to collect data, do this analysis. If I take this good action in terms of environmental sustainability or social sustainability, does it have any linkage with our economic benefits or not? Then in a company, it's usually they have to create a business case. Right? Any kind of any investment they make, there has to be a business case that why do I do this? Because there is a money there is invested capital involved in this. If somebody in the company is able to do that benefit, then it becomes easier for them also to convince the senior leadership that okay, we are doing this environmental or social sustainability action, but though it may cost money, this has these potential long term financial gains also for us. So this is from one paper. This is slightly old, so you will see this. They are almost considering sustainability as a separate project. This is 2010 paper. Right now, as we have discussed yesterday, sustainability need not be a separate project. It should be part of it. But even in that point of time, let's assume company who has not done anything, they are starting off, they will possibly start it off as a one-off project. They are now experimenting with how to improve our sustainability performance. They cannot embed it from day one across the organization. They have to run it with a few set of people who are trained, maybe some young graduates, and do this. So there again, enterprise mission, stakeholder analysis is important, because whatever this again companies do not understand fully. Their one action has a very significant impact on the entire ecosystem. There are employees, there are places where these employees live, maybe it's within the local radius of certain kilometers, and there is a plus there are local NGOs. If it's close to a river or close to sea, there are a lot of things which they take and they assume this is with outside our company walls, means we are not responsible, as we are saying, right? But this impact has to be done. Eventually in 20, 30, 40 years they will realize this is going to backfire on them, right? There is nobody to work, there are people who are having disease conditions and so on. Right, so this stakeholder analysis is important. Then you create the strategy and execute and design of indicators and validation. So if it's run off as a one-off project, this is something which they need to do. Still there is a method to madness, not something very ad hoc. There is a clear plan of why we are doing this. So this paper also talks about these stakeholders quite a lot. There are stakeholders are not just your workers or suppliers or shareholders, but also government and NGOs and local bodies. And there are a lot of resources which are going to help you. So these are tangible resource, the technology, products, knowledge also as a resource, and financial resource. You need to also assess what is your current level of these resources. Many people will say we don't have financial resources, we don't have money to do. But what about even the other ones, as you said, knowledge? But companies do not do this. If they have a knowledge gap, do they really invest in some kind of training? No. So this kind of awareness and assessment has to be done, where they are leaking and what they can provide this help. So what we did, as I said, this was part of almost every company, but Deloitte's also, everything we mapped into this shareholder value and revenue growth, margin and asset efficiency. So if you are also doing sustainability, how these things map to these corporate performance measures, then it becomes easier for a CEO or CFO to approve this. So if you say eco branding, possibly this will include revenue growth, right? Product stewardship, revenue growth. Environmental cost leadership and eco efficiency directly has an impact on cost and margin. Asset efficiency, eco efficiency and life cycle assessment has an impact. Then we created, as we have seen how these metrics were cascaded from the top to the bottom at a state or a country level. Same thing happens at a company level. Once you have mapped your sustainability initiatives to your economic performance measure, then you create metrics for each of these. So next level of metrics was simply sales and profit and use of alternate material and less consumption and so on. Then we developed further second tier of metrics, you can see. And this is not very different from what she has presented, but this is purely from a company and a supply chain perspective. But right now also I can say, apart from a few maybe top 100 companies in the world, nobody is doing this. Nobody is really doing this. European companies different. European companies, even smaller companies are doing this because this is part of their culture. Employees, if this is not there, employees will not work. Sometimes I have even heard companies saying that the younger generation of employees are so aware, they are actually selecting us. If they find out we are not sustainable, we are losing talent. Our business has nothing to do with sustainability. Maybe it's a financial services firm, but they look at employees come so well prepared in the interview. They ask us very tough questions. They are not joining us if they find out we are not sustainable. So this is happening quite to a large extent in Europe. I'm not sure. US, I'm sure this is not happening at all.
Yes, is always the creator of problems.
Yes. But this is happening in Europe. Maybe in India also you should start doing this. If they start in the IITs, if the company comes and they do a lot of greenwashing, you should tell them that all this tamasha will not work. You go prepared, come next year, and then you can join us.
Sir, I think the Nordic countries, they are the pioneers of the circular economy. How
Yes.
to, I mean,
Yes.
one company is using the end products of another company
Yes,
and
yes.
it goes on.
As a secondary source, right?
Yes.
And this is very systematic. So companies, they find out, they work, and the biggest thing is because it's a small area, they also work very well together because and that is not company level. It comes from, everything comes from primary schools. There most of the exams are group exams because it's a collaborative work. You are not supposed to work individually. It's always a project. Always, even from schools, there is a little bit of exam which is individual, but how we work together as a team is taught in schools. So same thing when these employees are joining companies, they are very collaborative. There are many forums I have seen in Denmark where companies openly come and share what they have. They have no fear of, oh, these people will take my ideas. They are always sharing things even within their business, and they are always collaborating. So they know if this is a raw material, this is a waste from them, very quickly they can find out who is the best company to use my waste. Maybe this waste is a raw material for them, right? So mostly through informal mechanisms they find out, and that's why they are able to use it. So this and because the culture is totally based on trust. This is completely different from us. There again, it's an anecdote. In Denmark, you can leave your children in a pram outside the restaurant. Parents are having food inside. The children is lying in the pram outside on the road. Nothing happens to them. In Switzerland, I have seen shops are closed. They still have lot of things outside the shop just lying. Nobody takes.
They can just give the money and take the goods. Yes,
Yeah.
I've seen that.
So it's a lot of things are also based on trust. When our country is still different, and it doesn't mean that everything what is done in the West is best. They have also a lot of things to learn from us, and what Madam presented, that kind of work has never been done in any country. I don't think that level of detail anything has been done. But it will be a pity if government, after doing lot of work, finally it's the business, people are working in companies, people are living in communities, that ground level change has to happen. And I think it can happen only through education at that primary level. If it happens too late, it's very difficult for us to change habits and do something. But right now, I see the difference is children are so aware that they don't really do things which is different. A little bit about the drivers in a supply chain context. We know all the facilities, whether it's a factory or a warehouse, they are the major sources of energy consumption, energy, water, and etc. Similarly, in the inventory is an important thing in supply chains. So raw materials means there is a lot of resources being spent in storing the material, energy consumption happening in warehouses, or it's a cold storage. And life cycle assessment can be done to assess the environmental impact. Similarly, lot happens in transportation, we all know, in emissions and energy consumption. Again, product design has a role in transportation, reducing packaging has a role in transportation, and also in sourcing. So majority of energy and water use also happen. That's why the scope 3 emissions come in, right? It is getting very difficult. Most companies are nowhere near, because within their company itself they have not been able to do fully. Now we are saying that everything has to be collected across the supply chain. But the challenge is majority of energy and water consumption, everything, the entire carbon footprint is across the supply chain, not within your company. So how do you measure and how do you monitor? That's very difficult. But after listening to madam's presentation, I see an important parallel. Their government is doing something. How does it happen at the panchayat level, village level? Similarly, let's say a big company are trying to do this. How do they ensure that all the smallest of small suppliers who are doing this, how will they do this? I think it will be great if government officials actually make such presentations to the corporate leaders. Maybe they should also try to train. I don't think a lot of business owners or CEOs have seen what the process, not just the final metrics. Everybody has probably seen, okay, BR is last and Kerala is first, but understanding the process of how they did it, same thing they need to do within their own companies and across the supply chain, right? And they will be able to see. People are smart. It's not that people cannot do it. Right? People can easily do it provided that will is there, and sometimes that process of doing is not easy, right? So they have to invest in resources, and in some cases, like Niti Aayog has been created for government, I firmly believe that these kind of industry bodies have a role to play there, right? Some kind of an external organization who is supporting these companies, and that cannot be again done for all industry. That's why a specific, maybe a steel industry, they help all the steel companies. Pharmaceutical companies, there is an industry body who helps this, who can actually help in doing this. Then once all of these are from Deloitte's material, more than 10, 12, 14 years, 15 years old. But once we have started getting some interest from companies, they have understood the risk of not doing and they have a process of doing this, then we said that this has to be a wholly sustainable enterprise. Don't think this is only for your manufacturing process or in the supply chain. This is only about environmental efficiency or worker well-being. This is about sustainable workplace. So this is about your buildings. This is about your workforce. Lot of the things which you are already doing, try to map. You can see parallel to the function. So this is related to HR. This is related to your facilities management and maintenance. This is about your products and services. This is about the actual process and governance of doing this. And this is about governance, and this is within the function and processes. So whatever you do, map it to sustainability, and if you are able to do all of this, then you really become a wholly sustainable enterprise. I can see a parallel with the whole of community approach, right? What she presented. So this is not just within a R&D does something, manufacturing does something, but this is across the entire organization. We will skip this discussion. Maybe in the evening we can have it. We have to move it to the case. Then we gave specific examples. While developing a product, what do you think, what does it mean? People always say, oh, this is all good, but we still don't know what is it that we have to do, right? Or everything still have to be spoon-fed. So this means new product formulation, new sustainable packaging, or sourcing from certified suppliers, or reducing waste in production. So this is not an exhaustive list, but depending on the company, we created very detailed guidelines and what are the things they can do. Again, this one, what is the time now? Let's see if we still have some time, maybe 10 minutes we can think about it. Now that we have listened to both the government side and the business side of measuring, monitoring, assessing sustainability and creating a strategy, you don't have to create a framework, but write about each of you individually, what are the key, most important takeaways for you, right? Whatever you have learned from Sanjukta ma'am and whatever I have presented to you, either you do for the districts and state or from a company or across supply chain, you are not creating a framework, but you find out what are the things, key learning and takeaways, and share with each other so that we all learn from this, right? Each one of you would have a separate thing, some important things which kind of stuck to you, and these are the things which you will make note of. Okay. Any thoughts? A couple of thoughts. Anybody?
Actually, I was thinking that we can also. So, in order to look forward, sometimes we have to look at the past also. I mean, because so what we used to do earlier, like in some initiatives while I was working, is that vendor development was an important part, or vendor or supplier development. Like
Yes.
many a times, earlier also, not necessarily sustainably, there were some requirements, and then we used to collaborate together and think of discuss the problems and solutions, because the expertise were from their side and what we wanted.
Yeah.
And subsequently, like you said, we had tier 1 suppliers and and then they would actually disseminate this to the others. That worked out very well in some
That
cases.
still works very well
and
everywhere.
So therefore, in sustainability issues also, where there are challenges, I think that is also a very good way of
Yes.
actually building up that trust and confidence, because that is which matters a lot. I mean, that if you even look at the relationship with suppliers, whether you talk of any kind of vendor development metrics, that trust and is very much required, coordination, because in times of emergency in our things, we used to kind of have blind faith on some of these,
Yes.
that they will kind of tide
They
us
will
over
deliver.
this situation. So because they have the other relationship with tier 2, tier 3, so this is a very important pay if we are even thinking of this sustainability part,
Yes.
where the challenges are, where the bottlenecks are, and there can be nothing better than kind of a face-to-face kind
Yeah,
of.
and these companies have to take that lead. So
Yeah, and
that vendor development was primary
vendor
for
development.
quality and product issues, right? Even for sustainability, imagine how will the small supplier collect data and report to you. You are saying we want this for scope 3 and you are done. You are not providing any help or support to them, right? But you have much more technically qualified people. Why can't you, as part of supplier development, or work with them to at least initial years handhold them and help them understand, right? Large companies can easily do it. I'm sure some companies are doing like that.
Yeah, there
And
are.
there might be good ideas coming from the supplier also.
Yes, yes, and that helps in the long run also
Yes.
in developing that trust relations. Just another thing which came to my mind again from a theoretical perspective. I mean, like it came to my mind while discussing this. We all know about this balanced scorecard matrix by Kaplan,
Yeah.
etc. Now, with this, sustainability also coming in, we can actually think of modify that a little bit. There are companies like Tata Steel which practice BSC, and some of these, can also be looked into. I'm not sure whether some paper has already been published,
Yeah.
incorporating that. That was just a thought which came
Yeah,
across.
very interesting. Okay.
To develop metrics or objectives based on.
Yeah. We have in supply chain, we used to have the score model, then it became a green score. I don't know balance scorecard whether they have incorporated any sustainability things. Okay.
So they have not incorporated, but what I know is these same things are there in the ESG. But the problem with ESG was it was totally qualitative. Now they are trying to put on metrics to
Yes.
each of those categories so that the companies can be given a score at every step. So, sir, I think, ma'am was discussing that these union territories and the states, there was kind of a competition between them who can climb up the ladder. So, if that can be done for the corporates, taking their initiatives and whatever information is there and putting it in face. I mean, not just, okay, I am ESG compliant, only that much is not
No,
enough.
not
If
at the
the
level of
nitty-gritties can
details.
be put it into the public, then I think the ones who are reluctant which 90% or maybe more than that are, they can be, it can be a indirect way of making
No,
them
it can
doing.
be part of financing since you work on. Suppose that information is shared with the banks.
Yes.
This company is asking for loan. We
Yes.
must see all their ESG indicators. If somebody is doing well, they will get a favorable rate.
Yes,
But that
yes.
also little bit policy push, etc. has to come. Banks cannot decide completely on their own that they will have a variable rate, right? But this can be done, and I think for you work on startups, you know more. For startup investing, it is already happening.
It is happening,
It
sir.
is happening that there are ESG, if there are ESG things, I think they are, most investors are asking for that information, right?
Yes, and so there are mutual funds which are curated only for this climate finance.
Yes.
So, I mean, but very few people and very few corporates are, I mean, eagerous to invest over there. That is because of the lack of knowledge and lack of forecasting. This sustainability is a long-term aspect.
Yes.
It's not a short-term thing. Ultimately, who will not align with this, they will be out of
they will be out of
practice
business,
and
yes.
out of business. So that is one thing. And sir, another thing, as I told you, it's knowledge dissemination. Like the big corporates collaborating with all those who are there in the value chain and the supply chain, everyone involved, and they are sharing with each other for a long-term
Yes.
effect, if they can do that.
That shared understanding. Yes. Good. Oh.
Another thing is poverty distribution among the Indian states and districts. There are several parameters ma'am has already mentioned about.
Yeah.
But sir, the challenges is, as ma'am mentioned that she visited to specific location, and based upon that scenario, she assumed that this may be the same scenario that is going on in
Yeah.
other
So when
areas.
this data was not there, right? She was
Yes, sir.
mentioning in that
So
context.
here we can use spatial analytics to get an location-based insight we can get about. And another thing we can use that for the fair resource allocation, we can use blockchain technology. So I think this can be helpful for the fair resource allocation for the
Even for
different
fair resources,
location.
let's say for
Yes.
land, now for a lot of land registry records are on blockchain. So nobody can fake what is their land area, even farming area, so on. So based on that, again, yes, what you said can be done.
Another thing we can use the different mobile app or SMS based feedback we can use, so that we can improve the resource allocation as per the demand of that particular area. So we can,
No, this is
in
interesting.
This way,
Now at least mobile penetration is high. So if the local government directly starts reaching out to the population through digital means, maybe they will get much more honest feedback. And she was right. She was very strategic in saying that we are not going to take ministry data, right? But even not surveys, we know survey is also through a sample, right? But if you now, we don't, and it has to be bottom up. Let's say we start with the village and the panchayat. If that panchayat officer, the Sachiv ji, is directly interacting with the villagers and getting their grievances and so on, it might be able to do much better work.
so basically we can use the predictive analytics for the better review, so that we
Yes.
can fairly allocate the resources.
Yes.
So in this way we can eradicate the disparities, as I believe.
Yeah.
And the second thing I want to mention that, sir, while we are talking about the resource allocation, there is a huge gap in the income inequalities in Indian states. So how we can address that situation? Because the marginalized society, they didn't even contribute to the budget discussion. So I think we can consider to that part also.
That's why one part when I am not fully aware of it, but the government's objective is to doubling farmers' income. So there is a lot of effort going on in terms of agricultural income improvement and productivity and so on. So because still large part of the population is in those communities are still involved in agriculture, but there also a mindset change has to happen, as we are discussing. Maybe different crops, or fishing to farming, and maybe they will do industrial work for some years. So that kind of incentives and that awareness also has to be there, right? But it has also a big social impact. Let's say if you see in the Sundarbans area, most of them are migrant laborers, because there are this, because of climate change, lot of issues, the working age population is going to other states to work as laborer in construction site, in different sites. but it has a huge social implication. That means male members, working age male members are not at all in the, so that means only aged and women and pregnant women and children are staying, which is also not good.
There is another downside also. The mangrove plantation has reduced a lot, which is again
Which
making
is
a
going to be,
susceptible for weather
yes,
impact.
which is going to create a havoc. By 2030, I don't know what will be the situation. In 5-6 years, it will be very bad, I think.
That is what I was asking, ma'am, that we are waiting for 10 to 15 years, fine, but climate is not going to wait.
No.
It will wreak its havoc every now and then. It's happening, and we can see it.
Yes. So climate related migration will also already happening, but from I think 2030 onwards, half of Bangladesh might shift because of climate reasons anyway towards Bengal and northeastern states. Okay, we cannot solve all the problems, but we will discuss over in the evening maybe. Now let's look at the JSW Steel case. I have chosen all the cases without knowing your profile, but now we have a steel expert. So I'm sure he will be able to give a lot of insights to this. So read the case. This should have been again shared earlier, but we are almost doing just in time. So go through the case and then we will discuss. Maybe again 2 groups like yesterday, right? पढ़ना भी पड़ेगा. हाँ, सॉफ्ट कॉपी होगा ना? प्रियंशी कहाँ है? She is our digital expert. WhatsApp. Again, no need to read everything, skim through it. We all know how to.
Actually, this the CEO of Jindal Stainless Steel, which is actually based in one of the based in Vista, they had visited our campus only last month, and they wanted, I mean, their main intention was how to make it more, user friendly and more popular. I mean, amongst, I mean, like you were talking about, the input, I mean, somehow using SMEs and somehow to propagate this, skill. Because if you look at the demographics of Odisha, there are a lot of aluminium plants.
Nalco others.
So aluminium as a substitute is, I mean, so they are actually looking at other avenues of how to popularize stainless steel. What they have come to, not, they did not want expertise inside the factory. They have this, but how to kind of
Market and branding and so on.
the downstream part. Not Raukela is integrated steel, and I'm talking about stainless steel, which is a little bit different.
ये जो है एक दे दो, मैं मुझे नहीं चाहिए, एक तो ऑलरेडी है, और दो दे दो. नहीं, दिस इज अ डिफरेंट, एक मिनट. there is one more which ideally I should not use, but You have printed the ones which were not supposed to be printed. जो लिखा हुआ है वो मेरा जो कॉपी था. सर के पास जो सर ने एक्चुअली खरीदा है उसका प्रिंट लेना था ना. ठीक है, सर क्लास में है क्या दूसरा?
डबल साइडेड करने गया तो उल्टा हो गया.
अच्छा अच्छा.
थोड़ा उर्दू में हो गया, इस साइड में स्टार्ट में.
कल के लिए जो केस है ना, तो पहले से ही उसको प्रिंट करके.
ज़्यादा आज तो हमने सोचा कि थोड़ा इसमें हो जाएगा, लेकिन ज़्यादा पेज चाहिए.
The questions are these. These are the 4 questions we will discuss. Shall we now start the discussion? Shall we start? The first question is easy, should not be too much. Why do you think they are focusing on sustainability?
Attracting investors.
That is what.
Don't look into the standards, then obviously investors will not give them money, and that too, if the standards are low, I mean, then what will happen? The cost of raising finance will go up.
Yeah. Yeah, steel is also a global industry, which also global steel players by nature steel is a resource intensive industry, but if rest of the steel industry globally is moving in that direction, steel is also a commodity, it has global prices, global implications, so they have to move into that. So there is a business risk associated if they don't do it. Plus for a steel, consumer perception is not so common. When we use a product, we don't see so much of steel or who has made it. Maybe that should come, but right now it is still. But if it is for industrial usage, the steel which goes in industrial products, maybe their customer is also asking for certain things. So there is normally a business financial risk, as you mentioned. There is also whoever is the user of their product, either individual customers like us or business customers, they might also ask.
And since the Chinese producers, they are also producing inexpensive steel, and along with the import duty also it is coming lesser than this price. So obviously people would be shifting to them rather than taking these steel at a higher price.
Yeah.
This, what we refer to as dumping of steel, actually the government has also, kind of come up with initiatives so that, this is arrested, because that was quite a bit of a challenge earlier during the late 90s, but now some kind of restrictions have been made. But more than that, I think, like here there is a particular trait of the steel industry that, like you said, it's very highly energy and water intensive industry. So therefore, the priority is of lowering costs in terms of, energy efficiency, productivity, then, as it is, has to be competitive in the world. Plus nowadays, you have also these norms, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 norms, which are, mandated mainly from the European, and also government of India has also mandated some emissionary, kind of clauses. So therefore, you have to monitor the emission of greenhouse gases, slag, etc., and even in terms of blast furnace and the other electric arc furnace. So earlier we used to do it when I was, again, with a disclaimer that I was not directly involved in the steel plant shop floor, but still we knew that we had some ad hoc, measures. Like we faced a lot of issues from Ministry of Environment and Forests for, mining, because iron ore is a, one of the main raw materials going into industry. There are a lot of things which are not there, but you face these kind of problems because if you look at the mines, they are mainly in the remote areas, and so therefore when you are actually mining iron ore, you have to blast and you have to then there is a lot of ecology also which gets disturbed. So there are lots of challenges, but again, there are some initiatives, like I was telling Madam also earlier, that even before CSR initiatives, we used to take about drinking waters, and those I am talking specifically about township area.
Yeah.
and the quality of life, because if you are having hospitals, schools, and all those things, so it's a township of the own. So like problems like, we used to face, I mean, was that uh, a worker used to, come drunk or absenteeism sometimes. Okay. Now, these things again were related to a lot of the, because you have to plan out and shifts and all that thing. But
So it has an impact on productivity. If the employee's health is not good,
impact
then
on productivity and other things. So, but then again, these were, at that time, there were ad hoc measures, not too much
so
of
much focused.
but now it is more, kind of organized, and there are, like milestones and all those, measures.
Okay. So there is, I mean, broadly we can agree there are some financial risk. There is a clear impact on business and market risk, also reputational risk, and this compliance. Sorry? Yeah, operational risk. So as I said, for businesses, this message of risk works well. Instead of telling, oh, with sustainability you can do so much, but if you don't do, these are the risks. So this generally companies are also moving in that direction. If you don't do, the actual downside is very high. And not everybody, again risk is perception based, right? Every company, somebody has very high risk appetite. They think, okay, we will let it go till the end, still nothing happens. But if some companies realize that, okay, if we don't do it now, in next 5 years, 10 years, situation will be very bad, so let us start. I guess JSW, if nothing was there, voluntarily they would have never done, right?
But one good thing is that, if you have these indicators, worldwide indicators, then it becomes more transparent.
Yes.
Otherwise, earlier, we used to have this Central Pollution Board inspection and minister, they are all were actually nuisance values to us. So actually here, it's a more transparent mechanism.
Everybody is having the same metrics. All your global competitors are reporting, and if your numbers look bad, again, there is a thing there. Okay. So next is the next question. This is an important one. So there are a lot of stakeholders involved in a very large setup like this, many employees, many other stakeholders. And how do you think the environmental changes affecting them? And then risk associated with those, not directly their operations, but who else is getting impacted? Any thoughts? You already mentioned a little bit, some of the employees are obviously
the other
stakeholders.
thing is that actually, there are a lot of the byproducts in the industry which also affect, other industries. In steel, for example, cement industry, paints industry. Okay, so they are all, because we can actually, and I know that, for example, if you look at the input also, the coal, coking coal, so we use a higher grade of, coking coal in steel. Lower grade is for thermal plants. But there also, there is a problem about high quality, coal which is sourced. Like mainly SAIL used to source it from BCCL, I mean Coal India. Now there are some problems there also. Now what I know that they were doing that also earlier, blending it with Australian, imported Australian and New Zealand, kind of thing. For that trade-off issues. But then again, you have to have this, because otherwise the blast furnaces might also get affected if you don't get that. And nowadays, at that time we used to move in the shop floors, I mean that time. But now everything is like, you have digital twin. So we can monitor those things and the replacement also of the lining, etc. Because that is also where, the energy efficiency counts. That we have a better, kind of know the life cycle or life.
Those things will come more in the circular part where we decide what to do with it. But for the stakeholders, anybody? The mic. No, not for you, but for others who are listening online.
Sir, here we can consider consider it from the regulator perspective. There are stringent environmental regulation from the government side. Even if they are not following that, they have to bear the legal liabilities. And the second part I will consider on the employee health, because it is a
it will lead to their health deterioration, so they should take care of that part also. And the local community responsibility, as it is a resource intensive industry, they are somehow contributing to the air pollution and land degradation, we can say. So I think this will be the major part. And the second thing is their customer, those customer who are from infrastructure and from the automation,
automotive, yeah.
automobile sector. So they are basically preferring the sustainable product. So those who are basically fulfilling the ESG criteria.
Yeah.
So even if they are not fulfilling this, so they will lose their contract. So I think this
Yeah,
is
these and then these steel plants are very large. It has direct employment, but also there are other ancillary industries who are so much dependent, right? You actually, there is a township or entire community which is dependent on you, right? So if you do certain things which are not, and it has a long-term health impact, not just for your employees but the overall community. So there are lot of negative, and you have to look at this, and that's why we in our field operations we mostly look at a systems view, right? It's not just within your company view. So what is the impact of your action on the entire stakeholders or the ecosystem as well as this broader community? If you do this, you will see there are a lot of negative implications of it. So clearly there are stakeholder concerns both from your customers, it can be investors, it can be NGOs, government, everybody has an impact, particularly in industry like this, right? Not every industry gets affected, but this is an industry where it employs large number of people, it almost creates a township and community, so many people are getting involved, and we have seen what has happened with the Bhopal gas tragedy and all, right? So it has a one small mistake, something, it is a huge impact, right? So clearly there are risks associated with it. Now the third question is very important, as we have discussed. Let us say they focus on some environmental sustainability actions. How will they create the competitive advantage? They will not do as part of philanthropy, that is very clear. Nobody does it and nobody should do also, right? So they are spending some money on, say, environmental and social sustainability. What is the impact, positive impact of those actions on their business? One is that creates some competitive advantage for them with respect to competitors. But as we have seen, it is not easy to make that assessment, and there has to be clear ways to make that assessment and monitor and see whether they are getting competitive advantage. Any thoughts on this? How will they proceed to do this, and how can actually it create an advantage? We can pass on the mic.
So this requires a lot of investment at the forefront. But as they were talking about the ROI, return on investment on these sustainability practices. So if they invest now, maybe they will not see profits for the next few years, maybe 2 to 3 years. But after that, when they'll be getting greater investments later on at a lower cost, in the long run, the cost will reduce and ultimately they will be making a profits even if the prices are same. So that is one of the ways where it can gain competitive advantage. And obviously the quality does matter. When we are talking about the Chinese steel, which is inexpensive maybe, but that is not as durable as the ones which are being made by JSW. So that way also they can keep what they are doing and also look into the future. But that's a long-term aspect.
Yes. So that is one part of it. That's a very good point. Any other thoughts? So we have discussed, I have given you a framework of those different strategies they can use, or they may be using they are using both eco-efficiency or the product stewardship. Let's say they have decided to follow a combination of these approaches to meet their goals. Now the next big question is, I have shown you some metrics, but how does it actually create competitive advantage? How does it impact their revenue? How does it impact their costs? How does it impact their asset efficiency? Plus in business, in management, we talk about this VRIO framework, whether their resources are valuable, rare, immutable or non-substitutable, right? So whatever resources they are creating through this, or they already have lot of capabilities. They have engineering capabilities, design capabilities, they have a talent pool, it's a large company, they have resources. On top of it, they are accumulating knowledge based on sustainability, but how far these are real? They have to make that assessment, which nobody else maybe in their industry can do, and that will not happen now, right? That will not happen today. So maybe they have also have to invest in R&D to create a more energy efficient process. And all steel companies have strong R&D units. There are metallurgical units who can actually do reduce the energy, improve the energy efficiency, or create better grade steel, or all high value added products. But at the same time, those have implications on sustainability. So they have to map all of this. What resources they have by following sustainability actions, to what extent these resources are becoming valuable, rare, immutable, or substitutable. At the same time, map it to those corporate performance measures, revenue growth. Does it lead to, and this will again, none of these will happen in 1 year, 2 years, 5. It might take a longer time. Similarly, cost efficiency, every year, because of this, they might be able to reduce some costs. Right? Energy efficiency surely will reduce some cost. Asset efficiency might improve. They will be able to, if they are using recycled things, asset efficiency improves because they are able to recycle their own material. Plus, steel industry is very common. Slag and other waste are sold to other industries, right? Cement and others. It might create additional revenue stream. But all of these things have to be backed by numbers. Initially, you don't know. You make an estimate that by doing this, maybe we will have 5% cost reduction. 2%, 5% revenue increase, or this much of asset efficiency. But this has to be monitored over a period of time and shown that this is the advantage you are getting. So the management, when they are putting in that money, they must know what is our current and what is it that we are trying to achieve through this, and is it really going to be long term sustainable, creating a competitive advantage in the long run or not, right? But most of these decisions sometimes is left to the CEO or some few people, and people either in the down the line they don't know, or this is not done anything scientifically or analytically. This is very perception based, gut feeling. Then these things, and that happens, then suddenly a new leader comes in or new vice president joins and they have their own thinking. If it is backed by data, then nobody can refute it. That's the biggest thing here. It is not conceptually I can say sustainability action will lead to some competitive advantage, but each company has to do their assessment themselves, like a very thorough assessment, that this is our current cost level, this is our current revenue level. If we do these actions, what will happen to those? And if this is documented well and they monitor, they will be able to see the advantage. Right?
Also, one point I want to make here is that even in that industry, there is a difference between a private sector like Jindal and a PSU like SAIL.
Yeah.
I can tell you one realistic, thing which happened in 1996 when that Devegowda government came. There was this steel minister called Birendra Vaishya from Assam. And can you imagine, he had actually talked about, starting a new steel plant of all places in Assam, okay, which is not the territory for ye. But again, that was because, as you said, that it is a large intensive and it can provide employment to a lot of people. So that is like serving his political constituency. And but thankfully it did not last much long. So therefore, we moved on. But again, some of these, decisions at the top level are also like, it's a time-based promotion in sale. So somebody who has 2 years in office, he wouldn't like to tinker much. Okay, so while the private sector is much more, like dynamic in that sense, in terms of the.
Good. So the last question, then how they should prepare itself to be circular, right? When there is a lot of technicality involved in this, but we are not here in a technical discussion. But there are certain waste streams which come from steel. Some of these can be reused. Some of these can be reused in your internal processes, water and other things. There are certain things which, as you are mentioning, it can be used as a secondary raw material for other industries, right? Some of the things are quite well known, like this slag goes on cement. There are certain things which are nowadays, I think they are used for making roads and pavements. Also, things
some
are being
new
used.
product development also is happening. What I hear. I mean,
but new product related to circularity, so that using waste streams. But again, what is the process they should follow? It should not be somebody has an idea, let's do it. It should not be very ad hoc, right? What we are interested here is to see how they can do it, how they can create a system or a process to continuously look at, and new ideas will come up. So, what is the process they should follow so that they can explore these circularity
So
options?
like I said that it is not that earlier we were not doing it. For
Yes.
example, earlier also there were a lot of scrap generated which we used in electric arc furnace
Yeah.
and then we actually recycled and reused it. But now probably what it's a more kind of calibrated kind of thing which is happening. And like I said that there is a lot of monitoring in terms of scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 and those kind of metrics. But I know that certain industry 4 technologies are being tried, but this again coming from the actually it's in the nascent stage. I mean also recently gone around a couple of metal and mining companies. So they are still in the earlier stages. I mean, like they are doing what are the low hanging fruits, but still, they have a long way to go in that sense. What they can do, obviously, lots to be done, but first and foremost, I think that I feel that that is a problem area. The management trainees who are coming in, the supply line, now they are coming from engineering colleges and there are most of them are still going through those old systems of workshop, practices, etc. So when they come here, they have an additional, time for them to train. But in that sense, nowadays the training is much better in terms of they are using VR, AR, a lot of these things. And because the times have changed. As I told you earlier, we used to be, our batchmates used to be there. Nowadays, you are there in a AC room and you are just monitoring and hardly you need to go until and unless there is anything. So anybody would like to add some other points?
No, I think as I was mentioning, the circularity also has to be systematic, right? It cannot be ad hoc. One example yesterday I was giving that this twinning, and this particularly is true for steel industry, lot of old timers are there. They have very good understanding of the process. A new person comes in, they might have different ideas, they know the technology well, so it's important to pair up these kind of senior people with junior people and form a task force and a team, maybe internal competition. Lot of companies nowadays have this kind of internal competition of ideas. Plus many ideas can come from your suppliers or other industries, then open innovation context, etc. you can do. And some other industries, more consumer oriented industries like Procter and Gamble and others, they have done this extensively. For any new ideas, they also look for external sources, right? They have this open innovation competition, they bring in startups. Similar way, these industries, steel and others, have been not so much forthright in getting external ideas, but if they have to continuously innovate, as I said, this is the one way they can break trade-offs, right? If maybe they will come up with very interesting ideas about utilizing waste material, and maybe it can create a separate business unit for them, a separate source of revenue for them, but this will not come through just ad hoc ideas.
One thing I have seen is that awareness thing has really come in down to the lower level also. I mean that part, right from the top level to the down level. Even in the shop floor, what I see is, it's very, very clean nowadays. I mean, and not lot of waste. Also, they have introduced lot of robotics and automation, in the factory, and so that the manpower also has also reduced in some way in the shop floor. So that part, is, but again, like implementing some of the technologies, still there are some bottlenecks. Sometimes also, one thing which I want to say is that like you see a plant like Nalco, which is quite old. So you are also, dealing with some old equipments, but still you have to, show productivity. And then, whether when you are actually trying to transition into you can't really compete with the new ones like, there is this I mean, what I'm forgetting that name, the new companies who are, who are more, so you have to be more
advanced.
agile.
So, as I said, a lot of this is dependent on your technology and process. There is a limit to what you can use, which you can achieve with the existing technology. But this question was more about circularity. So, I think as we have discussed, again they have to create a process. They have to create an internal team as well as external team, so that every year they can get these ideas and they can continue to move on. It cannot be like a very ad hoc. If we get some idea, we will do it. But circularity has to be consciously explored and do it every year, every month, to see some new ideas coming in. Many companies have this kind of competitions, some awards, some incentive mechanisms for people, and people who have ideas. But if you don't ask them, they have no incentive to tell, right? Many people down the shop floor will have ideas what to do with this material, this waste stream. Right? So with this we will close. So then we have the quiz.